Hi, everybody. This is Karen Elkins. This is Science to Sage, and our guest today is Nisha Manek. Did I do that?
Manek. You almost got it right there.
Well, we could start this over, but we won't. Here we go. She's a physician, a scientist who delves into spiritual inquiry and practice, and she is recognized internationally for the field of integrative medicine, which is really where I think that connects you with Tiller. Is that where you had that aha moment where you read one of his papers?
Yes.
Yeah, and from that place, you became, you had a lot of aha moments. And I think your book, which we're discussing today, is this one,
Yes.
which has my little tags in it, Bridging Science and Spirit, the Genius of William A. Tiller's Physics and the Promise of Information Medicine. And so, what is information medicine? Because most people, and well, even before we go there, who is Bill Tiller? I know Bill Tiller is, but most people on this planet either really know him from being in a niche, but the world wouldn't know necessarily what it is, the genius of what he has to offer that you're bringing to light and translating it in a way that people can understand it. I think that's the key, isn't it?
Right. So Karen, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited. You have been an inspiration to me. When Tiller and I had actually, if I can just digress just a tiny bit, we had a magazine called Science and Spirit. When I first joined him, I said, Dr. Tiller, we need some funding here for our amazing work, and I think we should start a magazine. And in fact, yours was an inspiration that we can bring the dialogue from different angles: biology, physics, social sciences on a uniform platform, because those voices are important. Well, it did extremely well for about a year. Now, the publisher folded. It wasn't our material. The publisher wanted to go into a different direction. They realized that their platform, their software, can do newspapers. So of 11 Media then said, can we actually close the magazines? And it wasn't just ours, it was business and everybody. So I just want to say Science to Sage is an important voice for many scientists who do not find a voice for good science. It's not woo-woo, it's not pseudoscience. I hear all of this. And I'll tell you, I'm a rheumatologist, so I look after people with chronic diseases. And that is immune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, psoriatic arthritis. And much of my career after training at Stanford University was at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And I spent, about 12 years there. So I was there for quite a long time. I was an educator, a researcher. We have looked at how to help people with chronic pain and joint diseases in terms of function and so on. I knew, and this was a clue from my patients, that if you do energetic things, that is Tai Chi, that you can help yourself beyond the chemical milieu. All right. And I was particularly interested and intrigued with something called Qigong. Qigong is a form of Tai Chi. They're actually quite related. Qigong is a more meditative form. And wouldn't you know it, the Mayo Clinic chair of integrative medicine said, Nisha, you have a deep interest in these energetic therapies. Why don't you write a book chapter in Qigong and do a rigorous review of the literature? Well, I told him, Brent, I'm not an energy healer. I'm a rheumatologist. He says, no, I think you can do this. And so I dived into the literature, randomized controlled trials. And lo and behold, and this was in 2006, there was quite a lot of research. A lot of it was in the Chinese journals, and I couldn't get to it. But I wanted to go deeper into what are this acupuncture system. And that's where I stumbled into Tiller's work. He has one paper that, if your listeners and viewers want to really dive into, and I think it's open access, is subtle energies. What are subtle energies? That was one of the first papers, but it was the second one I listed in my book. Very long title, really impossible. And I looked at that paper. Why? Because he had references to this intention. Whenever you do Qigong, you have to have intention. Okay, there's a
Okay.
link there. You have to go into your practice with a thought, a decision, and that rallies your acupuncture system. So he had a very important, first of all, link to Qigong and subtle energies and intention. So I thought when I read the paper, we're getting somewhere.
I like the word
Because
in or intention, like it's the inside.
intention, a thought, a
Attention.
decision,
Yeah.
yes,
It's also,
aim,
yeah, no, but I see it as in the
yes.
tension in your body, releasing it. When you're looking at the meridians, it's allowing things to flow.
Okay.
I love the words.
So when I think of intention, it is a focused thought.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Tiller says when you do these energetic things, you feel things. They are very, very tangible, but they're not electromagnetic. They're not like a telephone signal, or you can't detect the energy you're feeling inside in meditation or yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong. So I thought, okay, subtle energies. That was my segue into his work. And I contacted him. I couldn't understand his writing. I found the physics tough. They're full of equations. And there was silence for a long, long time. He's a physicist at Stanford. He had retired by then. He was in Arizona. And I was very persistent, long periods of silence. And we finally met in Arizona. I was giving a lecture in complementary therapies from the Mayo Clinic, and I came down and I knew he had retired there, so he agreed to meet with me. And so that's when we had dinner, and I remember that evening like it was yesterday, because what was so amazing about Tiller is that you have a physicist, but there's no question his language and his bearing, his being, is somebody he's like a yogi. He's very much a yogi who knew about the inner development that actually informs science. It was rooted in meditation. It was rooted in being an awake and fully functioning holistic human being. He wasn't putting physics out there and meditation here. They were very much intertwined. And there's one particular thing, and I do mention this in my introduction, that really struck me. Okay, and it struck me because at that time, in 2009, by the time I met him, I mentioned to him, do you know A Course in Miracles? And I was a student of A Course in Miracles because I used to study the teachings of David Hawkins. And I was a student of A Course in Miracles, which had really impacted me. There are no laws above God's. And in medicine, we have laws, many kinds, laws of nutrition, laws of vaccination, laws, this, laws, that, laws. We have many protocols, algorithms. They serve us well. I'm not dinging it. All I'm saying is, it seemed to me that the Course was pointing out that don't be limited by these. They serve a function, but we are much more than that. And so when I mentioned to Tiller that, it seems to me that something about your science speaks to A Course in Miracles, and in fact, I was trying to teach him something that, maybe you don't know A Course in Miracles. And I was stunned because he very clearly said, very casually, oh, yes, Helen Schuckman, she came to visit me at Stanford in 1973 or something. And he turned to his wife, Jean, and said, do you remember her? And so she had stayed with them maybe a couple of days in Menlo Park, and I was struck. Helen Schuckman is also a scientist, a psychologist at Columbia University. She was a scribe of the Course. So one scientist who, really took Jesus's thought system for the modern man. That's how I look at A Course in Miracles. It's very powerful. For Helen to come to Tiller was very meaningful for me. Yeah. And Tiller says, we read the Course. She had given the Tillers one of the early manuscripts and loved it. Tiller says, this is how we live. Here I am at that dinner going, whoa, Helen Schuckman met you. And so I realized here's somebody who totally seamlessly lives a spiritual life, a life that is like A Course in Miracles, that informs his science. And I found my mentor. I thought, this is the mentor I've been looking for.
I think a lot of people may not equate Stanford with the fact that things like Russell Targ was there. They
Yes.
did a lot of remote viewing. They did a lot
Yes.
of science that was out there. And most people wouldn't think of Stanford of doing that. But that actually informed a lot of military stuff and remote viewing over the years,
Yes.
looking for where the Russians or this was and that was, and it worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Harold and Puthoff, so Harold and Russell Targ, yes, you're right. It was the Stanford Research Institute, which is now closed. And they really dived into what we call psychoenergetics.
Yeah.
Psychoenergetics is the science of expanded human capability. So remote viewing is one of them, clairvoyance, clairaudience, future predictions. These are very, they have been looked at rigorously, much more even in Russia. So Tiller actually, when he went to Oxford University, read this book, Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, and was very struck that, this is really, it's not something out there. These people are doing some serious data-driven research, and we need to do that. And he realized he was the one to do that.
Okay.
Now, enriching science,
there was a connection.
Yes, and enriching science and spirit, Patricia Cyrus, who works with Stephen Schwartz, she was one of the senior remote viewers who found Saddam Hussein. In 2003, the Bush government did not know where this man was. And so Patricia Cyrus was a team of remote viewers who could, they actually go into beyond space and time. So psychoenergetics is a science beyond space and time as we understand it. It's like a field effect. And I know I'm giving your viewers and listeners far more. They'll have to dive into the book. I would recommend that.
We're getting there because this is kind of like the setup for this.
Yeah, I do define, I'm very rigorous about defining terms and defining what I mean by field effect, and I actually call it the granny effect. So that, because the granny in her church who's praying for you, make no mistake about it, their intention goes a long way. And it does do things, okay? It does change you. And so we have to respect these things. They're not just placebo effect, which we tend to brush aside. And so I was, in touch with Patricia Cyrus. You're absolutely right. Harold and Puthoff's, or Targ's and Puthoff's work is very legitimate. It was, in the 1970s and 80s. They have done lots of work. And one of them is also, it's a reference in my book by, the name escapes me, but what these people were saying, and what when I encounter Patricia Cyrus, is that you can evolve to a higher sense of yourself beyond the five senses. And we have those gifts if we would just meditate and get in touch with ourselves. Those outer and inner gifts need to be tied together, and they need to be related together. Okay. And in fact, one of the first things that Tiller said to me before he would meet me, or actually when he met me, he said, I don't think so. I said, could you accept me? And I would, I want to study your model in more detail. I intuitively know it has some importance in medicine. I don't know what it is, but I think you need to tell me and show me, and I will learn. I will. And he said, no, I don't think so. You should just stick with medicine. Don't go into physics. You don't belong there. And I was very disappointed, but he did have second thoughts. And he said, before I do any work with you, you need to meditate. And so before I got on the call with you, Karen, I did my half an hour meditation. It's something I look forward to. I take it. I mean, it's really changed my life. And if there's one lesson, whatever the meditation means to you, whether it's scripture, whether it's sitting quietly, whether it's breathing in and out, take the practice. Be with your mind. And they call it, but I'm afraid of my mind. There's a lot of fear about the monkey mind. Well, so be it. Go there, sit there, put your sit down, and just be there. Observe. Intense observation is self-education, which is so valuable. Okay, it'll be 1 year, 2 years, but just go there. The mystics have said that. That's our evolutionary result. And if Tiller is a yogi who can do this, be a physicist and be inner self-disciplined and be such a giant human being. Well, why not us? He's contemporary. He's here. He's in my book, front and center. Okay.
You call it psychoenergetic is the second
Yes.
revolution for mankind.
Yeah. Well, that's Tiller's book.
Yeah. Okay.
The second Copernican scale revolution. And, you know, I opened Bridging Science and Spirit with Nicholas Copernicus. Who was this man? And he was a bishop in the Catholic Church. And, you know, his love was astronomy. He would go up into his cathedral phone book and observe the heavens before the telescope was invented. So with his naked, he would have a metal tube and scan the heavens. And he did this in secret. Because in those days, the church believed that the earth was the center of the heavens. The earth was it, not the sun. The center was earth. And Nicholas Copernicus said, well, the data doesn't seem to show that. The numbers are showing something different. How you interpret the numbers. And he kept his manuscript in secret for a long, long time. He was nearly dying, about a few years before his death. Lo and behold, Martin Luther was a Lutheran, revolution, and a Lutheran, somebody from Germany, Joachim Redikus, comes to his doorstep in Poland, risks his life, and says, "Teach me. Teach me about your astronomy, because there's a revolution in your data." And so I told Tiller, okay, literally. That's what he said. Okay, Copernicus set off a revolution in the sciences in 1543 or something like that, when he published his book, and set off the scientific method. Then it was really taking off with Descartes. So the first 2 chapters in my book, we unfold the history of science, where we are, because we are beneficiaries of that work, okay, the scientific method. But we have to now come full circle and go back to spirituality and the scientific method. They're all together. So the readers will go into Copernicus, and it's fun. There was a lot of imagination. It's factual, but I do put a lot of my creativity, had fun with this, and look at Descartes and his life and what he has gifted us. And then I go into medicine. And I said, medicine is stuck in chemistry.
Yeah.
And we need a new revolution in medicine beyond just chemical medicine. And that is the segue into the book. I go into consciousness, thermodynamics, and so on. So in medicine, I talk about the fact that we are in the realm of randomized controlled trials. We look at the human as a biochemical being. And we stop there. We go a little bit into psychiatry and psychology and mind, and we understand that the mind has tremendous effect on the chemical milieu, but we still don't do it actively at the bedside. We don't. I mean, I know as a rheumatologist, the first thing I ask about is, did you do your labs? And let's look at your x-rays. I still do that. But now with my integrative practice, I open up, what did you eat for breakfast? Let's go into the nutritional. Let's go into the mind body. And I prescribe Tai Chi every day, almost every day. I teach them. Okay, so the integrative rheumatology or medical practitioner is not just about biochemistry, about the blood test results and x-rays and function and structure, but really looking at the holistic human, the inner, and their outer. We're really gathering more data into those outer aspects, their home life, their financial situation. I do go there, and I also go into their spiritual health. So all of this informs me. I want them to understand that these spiritual, emotional, their marriage, their home life, whatever they're eating, all of them are part of their diet. We think diet is just calories. No, diet is a lot more that you take in, whether it's what you read, what you listen to. When you incorporate it, it is part of you.
It's part of your chemistry.
Yes, it's part of your chemistry. Absolutely.
And how we move the molecules inside.
Yes, and I think Bruce Lipton, he
Yeah.
calls the biology of belief, and he showed that many years ago that it's not the DNA, it's something much more in the cell membrane which lets in those impulses.
No.
But we have control over this, and that's what I talk about: intensive self-education. And when Tiller says, "I want you to meditate," because without that, you are bouncing around. You have to have the steadiness, and it takes time. It's not overnight, I'll tell you right now, but I'm very grateful for his counsel to me all those years ago. And I knew that I was doing daily, A Course in Miracles. Now it became firmer, it became a priority, it became something I read. And today, actually, I'm reading Vimala's books. Vimala Tucker is one of my teachers. I've dedicated the book to David Hawkins and Vimalaji, who, he's now passed away, but I was in India 2 weeks ago on a solo meditation retreat. So I do want this very much a part of my life, not just being a doctor, but to bring in that interrelatedness of inner and the outer together in every possible way.
Your origins are from India?
My origins are actually from Kenya. I was born and raised in Kenya, and then I was raised in Nairobi.
Okay.
But my education took me a long ways away. I was home in Kenya too, but my medical school is from the University of Glasgow in Scotland.
Yeah, you're like,
yes.
Okay.
I did medicine in London. And yes, and I'm a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians. And I'm a fellow of the Royal American College of Physicians. So, I'm very much a scientist in my training, in my career. That's why I always say science is my heartbeat, but so is spirituality. And they're both similar. They inform each other. Okay, so
when I look at physics and I look at Eastern traditions,
yes,
liquid, solids, and gases is no different than air, fire, and water.
Yeah. Yes. They just give different languages to.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that, since that's all we're made of, we're always just moving those.
Yes.
And either the chemicals move it, the environment move it, or what we eat moves it. But no matter what, either it's outer or inner, and it's both. It's exactly right.
I like what you said, moves it. So, Tiller, this is his genius. Because he insisted that when you have intention and you can't be, he says, can intention do something out there to a material? He's a material scientist and a physicist. So he knows materials like water. We think water is, it's one of the most complex, flexible structures ever. Okay, It really defies a lot of our understanding. A glass of water sitting on your desk is one huge molecule, okay, because of the hydrogen bonds. So Tiller says, can my intention change the water in one direction? He chose pH because you can monitor it. You can monitor and have very exquisite data points. You can get information from your experiment. And so he designed this very, very methodically and asked the question, can my intention change the pH of water? Now, well, we'd say, of course it can, but many people will say, oh, come on, don't be ridiculous. I was one of them. Don't be ridiculous. You can't change a glass of water with your thought alone. Would it take a minute, 10 minutes, 2 months, ever? He said, those are the unknowns. We don't know. But here's the second thing he did, which is a genius thing. He said, we know, and this is where Russell Targ's and Harold Putoff's work come in. Actually even the Pear Lab, Brenda Dunn and John, Jan and Dunn's work, Pear Labs, the Princeton Anomalous Research Labs, okay? And they have shown again and again that human can affect a machine from a distance and affect it in a direction, okay? Yep. So Tiller said, can a human, and I'm taking my glass case, can it actually, a human intention, change this thing, this device, and then in a stable way, and can that information now be broadcast to the water?
Of course.
He put a step. He put a step in between his intention, because you can't intend forever and night after night, forever and ever. He can hold an intention for 30 minutes, but that may not be enough. So he says, let's try something new. We hold an intention, imprint the information in the device, and now the device, like a laser beam, like a subtle energy laser beam information to the glass of water. Now I'm using the word subtle energy and information. Again, the readers do need to get my book, because I define these things, and when you sit with it, it starts to make sense. Oh, okay. And lo and behold, this device wasn't in his lab. It was actually shipped to Minnesota. The lab there unwrapped it and put it next to, this is my diary, into the glass of, right, separated, and they switched the device on. And initially it took about 2 to 3 months, but the pH went up or down depending on their intention. The receiving lab didn't know what the intention was. They just left, closed the door, let the computers do their thing. Okay, they sealed the water. You don't want it to evaporate. I mean, these are little protocol details, okay? And I do go a little bit into it because people have relevant questions. But what was fascinating, that without any chemical addition, that tiller, somehow this thing is broadcasting, it's activated. It's not in equilibrium.
Yeah, I hear you.
This is thermodynamically active. Thermodynamics is when you said you move things. The universe moves things when there's a gradient of energy and a gradient of information, okay? And so the car rolls down, the cup of coffee becomes cold, and it reaches equilibrium. So when Tiller and his team meditated at Stanford around this device, it looks the same to you and me, but it's activated, okay? And it was stably activated for several weeks, maybe 3 to 6 months. He found that over time. And now they're activated for much longer because they're so adept. They're like masters at this, okay? And so this is it. Now, here's the thing. You can do thermodynamic calculations and connect the dots with this device and what's happening to the water. And the clue was the physical space. Something about the lab space itself changed. And that's where the juice is. It's just, to me, amazing that we have known this. You know, I'll give you an example, Karen. When I was doing research in London in arthritis, I was at St. Thomas's Hospital. It's a teaching hospital along the River Thames. Across the bridge, Westminster Bridge, is the Houses of Parliament and Westminster Abbey. I would go to the Abbey for lunch, okay? I would go there because now I realize I was recharging myself. The Abbey was empty. I would go and sit there and just, and then go back. What was I doing in the Abbey? What was I doing in the Abbey? Yes, I was being quiet, but there was something more. And Tiller's science made me link the dots because I had no idea. To me, the Abbey is beautiful. The Abbey has stained glass windows. All of that is true. But I had closed my eyes. The stained glass window is not impacting me. I'm just sitting on a wooden bench inside. I'm not having any visual input, but I was soaking something in the Westminster Abbey. And that was free energy. That was informational. Information and energy are interlinked. They're not separate. So physics now says the most fundamental unit of the universe is not stuff. It's not atoms. It's not molecules. It's not electrons. It's not even energy. The more fundamental thing in the universe, and it's physical, is information. And we think of information as just being digital. You know, this thing we're doing right now is information exchange. We can see each other. Those are zeros and ones in very complex, beautiful ways. And yes, that's information, but information is much more expanded than just something we write, something we create in an equation. So Tiller has touched on information that really drives energy. Your intention is a source of information. When he made the intention to change that pH of water, he created information in a very, very specific way. He wrote it in a physicist way, but it was very specific.
But he put it into the field.
Yes, and then he imprinted that information. That information changed the very space of the lab, and that drove the hydrogen ions in a specific direction in that water, okay? And then they could detect it.
Would it be like the ripple in the wave?
Well, I do go into wave mechanics because ripple and wave to me are the same.
Yeah, exactly.
But, okay, but the waves in...
Okay, go ahead. I'll be quiet.
The waves, the way, okay, yeah. When he did this experiment, the real other piece of his genius was he monitored the lab space, the temperature, the water pH. These are thermodynamic variables that you need to understand the behavior of the material. Okay, you do need that. When you're moving things, my body, when I'm moving my brain cells, it's moving through chemical potentials. That's thermodynamics. Okay, it's not some quantum thing. I'm just going very simple here. Thermodynamic potentials move my brain cells to talk to you. So he's asking the question, let's also monitor the ambient conditions of the lab where the experiments are being conducted.
Right.
And he found very unusual wave-like behavior in the temperature of the room where the experiment was going on. And the waves are not air waves going up and down, because I can feel a breeze even as I move my hands. The waves were quite different. Mm. When you have a wave, when you put a pebble in a pond, there's a ripple effect, but the ripple effect dies off. Right. It's finite. Mm-hmm. In Tiller's labs or in Minnesota, they were not finite. Where was the source of the waves? And they were continuing day and night. It wasn't related to air conditioning or diurnal temperature variations, or it didn't have a source, and they weren't dying off. That was weird behavior. It's anomalous. And that was the clue. And this is Tiller's genius again. He looked at those waves and says, I don't know where they're coming from. What does this mean? But he didn't dump the data. He didn't call it random. He says he tried all kinds of things. He put fans, he monitored things and said, maybe they'll die off with the fan turning off, because when you turn on a fan, you're going to perturb the air. And if those are airwaves, they'll disappear immediately. And these didn't. This is not air. And so I go into this a little bit more detail in Bridging Science and Spirit. And I do encourage those readers to go there, and because it'll open up a whole new world for you. So now this Westminster Abbey has, if I were to take the Tiller devices and put them there and watch those waves, I bet you the Westminster Abbey would show that. Tiller had, by his intention, created a space quite unlike any other. And materials behaved differently in that space. Does that create something even in hospitals, in clinics? And so I go that into informational healing, okay? If intention can do such powerful things in organic matter like water, then what about living systems? Because we are water, we have all of those components inside of us, and he does do that. And pillar number 6, information medicine, unpacks that. The data is there, it's in abstracts, it's been presented in conferences. So, it blows my mind. It even today blows my mind that, Tiller sitting in Arizona can buy his intention imprinted for a group of people sitting in San Francisco or around the world. And then we collected data for autism. These are children with autism. And he wanted to help them because autistic children are difficult. They don't have speech. They have repetitive behaviors. I'm not a pediatrician, but I looked into it and I thought, wow. And he teamed up with Susie Miller, who's a speech pathologist, and they imprinted an intention statement to help autistic children. And the device was in Arizona. Tiller has never met these folks all around the world, some of them in Australia, in Europe, and all around North America. And then the data started to come in. And I can tell you their speech did improve. Okay. And this is nothing less than astonishing when you know that in conventional medicine, really speech is the loss to improve. And yet they were finding quite the opposite.
But it is information.
Yes, that something about unconditional loving kindness that Tiller showed to help these children along their pathway in this lifetime was really invoking big changes in them, okay? And they were not physically in Arizona, they're physically somewhere else. So it's not through a telephone wire. This is the power of subtle energies and information, okay?
Is that part of where we are as he says, we're evolving? We're always evolving. So we're evolving in our information and the effects that we truly do have.
Yeah. So, you know, Tiller, when I give his definition of intention. Intention is a process of creation.
Yeah.
Okay. Intention is a process of creation. What are you creating in your life, in your breakfast, in your very clothing? Your intention is in full view all of the time, and you can change that. Okay. So intention is your process of creation, and he's saying by your creation you evolve. And when you are of a steady mind, your meditative mind, your vitality, your creativity, your bandwidth is expanded. You allow your subconscious also to operate, and what it feeds you, you give meaning to it. I think it's very beautiful. So you're not just a mechanistic device, technological thing, always on your phone, or, you know, we are repeating behavior patterns. Now with meditation as your platform, your intention takes on a new creative power and vitality because it's informed from a deeper sense. Okay, your bandwidth expands.
But also I get information from it. I get information when I sit quiet and I ask questions, the field answers.
Yes, it will answer.
It does answer. And what's really interesting is that goes back to probably your Course in Miracles and even the idea of what's first cause. Why are we here? What is our purpose?
Yes. Our purpose, what Tiller would say is, use your gift of intentionality and become self-illumined. You are not just Homo sapiens, you're on your way to becoming Homo spiritus. Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus, or Homo illumini. And my teacher says Homo universalis. We are really a unified family. We can't talk about separation. We can't behave in separate ways. We are moving in that direction. And I think the young people get it. I think the newer generations that are now coming in, they have information that is so much out there, and that they need to have discernment. They need to have a way to sort out all this stuff that is in front of them. And that's why I think meditation is very important, that you understand that things are sometimes not what they seem. You know, the books you read and the newspaper, the fake news, right? We hear all this. So we need to settle in, not get bounced around, and then become, self-regulated. Again, that takes great observation and intensive self-education. I hope Bridging Science and Spirit, this will open up the reader's mind, because there are tools presented there. You can do these things. The levels of consciousness, by kinesiology, you have those tools, available to you.
There's a couple things you had in your book that have highlighted that kind of tweaked some sort of way. You said, we must go beyond the speed of light. A sacred cow of physics. It's not our reality. Humankind are rooted well beyond into the superluminal realms. And what you basically say is, now with the discovery of the Higgs boson, we are going beyond the electromagnetic world. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you're speaking to this, but now we're like peeling off another cloak of what we thought was science.
Yeah.
And we're really bridging, like you said, coming back full circle.
Yeah. You speak to the end of the pillar number 1, where I asked Tiller, what is one of the discoveries in physics that has really been so phenomenal? And in July 2012, the discovery of the Higgs boson really was momentous. Why? Because it was the one particle still remaining to close the Standard Model. The Standard Model is the study of materials, okay? Leptons, quarks, protons, all of those. Those are the Standard Model, and the boson was the last remaining piece in the house. But with that discovery means, what next? What is next? And the Higgs boson was found in the Cern, the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. They smash protons head on, and you form new particles. You destroy the proton and you get new particles, and it's statistical, but they found the boson in that smashing of protons, and protons are traveling at 99.9% close to the speed of light. So we're right there. But now what? Okay, and then I talk about Lord Shiva.
Yeah, you do. I have that here. Yeah,
Lord Shiva. There's a Lord Shiva statue on the grounds of Cern, and in the plaque of the Lord Shiva, it says, "I'm dancing in the dance of protons." Now what? And Lord Shiva would say, "You're not matter. You are not matter. You are much more than that." Well, what is that much more than that? And so I open up the conversation that even the Lord, the God himself, loves science. He's there. And he's saying, well, go beyond the speed of light, because the protons are right there. And we've already discovered that. We have closed our ignorance about the Standard Model. It's fulfilled. Now go beyond the speed of light. We have to go there. We don't have the tools. Doesn't mean we don't ask the questions, but now we can open up that and look at it honestly and say, okay, what is the next stage in creating new tools, creating new questions, not get stuck here? After that 2012, what has CERN given us? We're still waiting. And I know they will, because we have talented brainiac physicians and physicists who are working on this. I said physicians, but physicists working on this question. What is the next thing?
But it's the interesting part when the way you say that in my mind, it stays in the head. It doesn't include the heart.
Ah, yes,
right?
You're right.
And so with all that mental equations and all of those things, it really defies the spirit of why we even exist.
Yes.
And that goes back to what you're talking about, the idea of entanglement, field effects, information, how it comes and arranges, and the subtler parts of different things.
Yes.
So if we're like on a rainbow, or we're coming down we're going through the layers.
Yes.
And they get more subtle. So, okay, wow, they found a subtler layer. Okay, well, that's good now. But it doesn't even touch the question of reality, which where you were going before.
Well, when we have these scientific experiments, and it is of the intellect, it does have good benefits. This is why we are reaping the benefits of me talking to you, Karen, because we have a camera. I can see Karen, she can hear me. I can see you with my glasses. So the scientific inquiry is important, but we are at a point of saturation. This is what Tiller is saying, bring in the heart. Because once you do that, you will expand your bandwidth. You will ask questions in a very different way, not in a separate, intellectual, closed way, but in a different way. And this is where I do put a caution in pillar number 4. And I end the pillar number 4 of the bridge with the question, what is artificial intelligence? Okay. And I quote Bill Buxby of and I think he's still at Microsoft, but he does say that the next breakthrough in artificial intelligence can only happen when the youth and the people creating it have a bigger sense that they're not in a basement somewhere in their garage creating these things, but they're living life, anchored in life, relating with life. Okay, so you're right. And when do you relate with life? You have a relationship of the heart. Okay, you're not isolated, and it also goes to for me to be in India,
yeah,
for 2 weeks. I didn't want to come back. I don't want to come back with my rowdy mind, because it was quite delicious to be in India for 2 weeks. Get up and go and sit in meditation. And then somebody politely, I know that lunch is ready. Nobody bothers me. I can contemplate, read. It was very nice. Okay. And then I read something here, which I think speaks to what we're talking about right now. When you do any action, which is a physics lab or intellect, without the foundation of meditation and consciousness, it's bound to be an ego-centered activity. But on the other side of the coin, if you live in a state of meditation like I was, in isolation in India, in physical isolation, and without its social consequences or its relationship and interrelatedness, then that meditative lifestyle is also valueless and impotent. It is shocking. You have to do the inner, and you have to come back and still live the life.
That reminds me of the Maharishi school.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about? Because they
Yes.
they go in and they do take a topic, and that's all they do. Instead of doing an hour here and an hour there. And during the middle of the day, there's always the meditation, because then you always have to contemplate. They take the moment to contemplate.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that they're in the university, but they're paying attention to the inner health and relating both. You have to do both.
All genius always has a vision, a dream, an aha moment.
Yes.
And so if it was already in the books, somewhere that we would have read, it would have already been. So they always have a moment of insight or inspiration.
Yes.
It gives them. And I mean, that goes for all of them.
Yeah.
And so without having that place to sit still and have that revelation, or that where you have that question and then you have literally the insight.
Yes.
And when we look at everything as being fractal, as above, so below, so within, so the soul.
Yes.
What's really interesting is it's within us to be able to access this, but it is in the fractal universe, which is holographic. So what part of that mirror are you finding and reflecting? And so if you're reflecting somewhere over there, you're still finding that mirror.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense?
I think it does make sense that there is a holographic way of this information. This is not separated. I always think in non-duality, okay? And some people like the Advaita Vedanta non-duality philosophy, but it's really very real. And we're coming to that, that we're not separate. We are one big human family. You're not just lonely figure in this vast cosmos. You are making a difference. People often say, well, what am I going to do? Oh, yes, you do. How many people does it take to save the world? So I think we all play a role, and we do our best. We come from the heart, and I'm glad you are saying that even in the Cern, and I know they do, because they come close. Physics comes close, and they all contemplate that there's something bigger. David Bohm speaks to this implicate and explicit order, that he found that we may not have a word, or we cannot put our arms around it, but it's definitely there. And we do namaste. We pay homage to that, because it's wonderful. That mystery is always with us. Okay.
The word entropy was really giving me, I had to really go back and look it up. So that, I think this explains part of, so I think you can explain it within this context. Doesn't it not make sense?
So, I go into entropy because it is so much part of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics, the first law is energy is neither created nor destroyed. Okay, and we know that, and you can't prove it. It's implicit. It's just a description of nature, and it serves very well. You can't disprove it. It's been shown to be true. The second law, at its fundamental, is that everything goes to disorder. we are going to hit the dust one day. Okay, we can take our vitamins, we exercise, all has value, but eventually we are running down. That's what entropy means, that it's inevitable. Probability means that by, odds are that everything is running down to equilibrium, back to no energy, no potentials and everything. And I actually give the example in the book of, Tiller and I used to meet every Thursday. He would come to my apartment 9:00 a.m. sharp, and I'd have tea ready for him. And he used to particularly like oolong or jasmine. And I brought the example that when I make a pot of jasmine tea, the jasmine molecules don't stay sequestered in the pot. They're probability-wise, they're going to leave the pot, fragrance my kitchen, the apartment, go down Scottsdale down the road, and then they're encircling the earth, okay? And we are breathing in those molecules right now. So the probability is that jasmine molecules don't stay there. They're going to be dispersing. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not. Just entropy, people think disorder is horrible. No, disorder is just the nature of life, okay? And that we, to some extent, are far from entropy, and we do the necessary things to keep healthy, but entropy probability is inevitable, and we should accept it. It's not a bad thing. What Tiller does with his science is that he reduces the disorder in the physical for a time, okay? The space that he creates, that sacredness, my Westminster Abbey was doing that. It was giving me coherence. It was just beautiful, very delicious way of being for half an hour. And then I could go back to my lab, to my office in St. Thomas's Hospital and keep working away on my paper. But so that increase in coherence in the space is what Tiller's showing by calculation, okay? And that coherence is called neg entropy. So I'm giving you a lot of words, but simply he's reducing entropy. That gives you excess energy to do useful work. That's all. And you can do connections. This is not woo-woo. This is absolutely science that is connected mathematically. Now you can have some way to get your arms around it. Otherwise, consciousness and all of these things are just, well, they're out there. And the other beautiful thing about Tiller physics, he doesn't use the brain. He doesn't use brain MRI to study consciousness. He literally goes into what is intention, in that intangible, invisible space. And that's courageous, okay? Because otherwise we're locked in our skull. And I do go into this a little bit.
You do.
The tyranny of brain science in pillar number 2, where we look at consciousness, our biases towards what things have consciousness. And I do make the case that my device, my thing that I have now imprinted is very intelligent. Don't think it's just a little glass case anymore, or the device that he uses. And, people get very hung up on the device, and I do too. I took my device to India. Absolutely, I did. I wanted to imprint with the holy sites there, and I bring it back. It's now plugged in my room, okay? So it's very real to me that these things, the essence of loving kindness is something, we take fruit and flowers and water and sacred oils. You can bring them back. I just brought my device back. That's all. So anyway, I hope that answers your question around entropy. It's really physical disorder, disordered molecules, and Tiller's bringing that coherence back to the physical space itself.
You know what brought me into my mind when you said that was I had the tea. It was yummy. I smelled it. And it was my moment. I was done with the moment. It dissipated.
Yes.
It's in the ether, and it'll come back in through the water. I'll put it back in a teapot. I'll reorganize it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't feel like chaos. It almost feels like I'm in order, and then I'm going to reorder.
Yes.
And I'm going to re-invite it back in.
Yes.
And when I think of you, and I think of the Abbey, and I think of the stained glass windows and the lights coming in and the energy and the color, it's that's also a designed and created space. And
Yes.
in its geometry, as it beams into you, that's intentionality in its creation. That so
Yes.
once you go in there,
Mm-hmm.
you have a moment. You have that structure because they built it to mirror the bodies, to reflect the light and the kaleidoscope of what life is.
Yes. So you speak to the intention of many generations
Yeah.
down the road who have painstakingly put together the high cathedrals
Yeah.
and gone there to worship our divine self. And we pump the space all the time. We're doing it. And I make the case in Bridging Science and Spirit that we can do the same in our hospitals. Yes, we can decorate the walls and bring nature in, bring animals in, and hospitals do that. Okay, and I think it's a very important step forward to bringing this holistic healing environment, but we can do more. We can pay attention to the physical vacuum itself. And again, I want the readers to understand what I'm talking about, because we could go on for weeks and weeks, some of the themes around the book. But, and also you speak to the fact that when you consume the tea, you're fully present, you enjoyed it, the moment was complete. It was complete. There was nothing of entropy or not. You know, and those things are just simply for the scientific mind to describe this is how we understand nature. But you're right, we don't necessarily need it. Okay, we don't necessarily. But my own task in writing this book was, as I said, I wanted to have a new way forward in medicine. Yeah. And I think the Tiller physics really opens a new way. It's a way. It's not the way. It is a way. And for us to really just look at it honestly with a clear eye and say, I may not believe all of this, or I do, but some people are totally vested in it. And I've had readers say, well, I'm not sure yet. It's fine. All of it is okay. In the grand scheme, I'm not here to twist anyone's opinion, but I would invite a clear reading of this and to really sit back and then go back to it and say, does this still make sense or not? Can I honestly brush it aside? Then you're entitled to that. Or I've had readers say, I'm all in. Here's my CV. Can I be on the battery? So it's kind of fun, you know. It has opened up questions for many, many people, and I'm glad. The conversation is long overdue.
I think when I read the book and I'm listening to you, mm-hmm. and I'm thinking of the glass of water, because I've done a ton of issues on water, uh-huh. and you're 99.9% water at a molecular level. Mm-hmm. When you touch the water, and there's 2 cups of water, as I've said in other things before, your hand on that water will create one resonant field. And you take that drop, it's going to look one way, and I take my drop and it's going to feel another way. So yes. My resonant field being a container, yes, is going to affect your field.
So absolutely right. And this is the basis of yeah. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, it's kind of like you can walk in and somebody's got a vibe. Their container of water literally walks in with their signature.
Yeah, you know, I call it the pumper-uppers and the drainer-downers.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I do call that. And, you know, I was a little afraid, but my editor didn't remove that sentence. You know, I mean, we had a back and forth, you know, I had very fine editors, and I had 3 or 4 of them. And so I did put the pumper-uppers, and Tiller's are very much a pumper-upper. Okay. And when he chose the team at Stanford, you know, they look like you and me. You know, they were wearing shirts and trousers and having their PhD thesis, but really, Karen, he insisted that they were meditators. They were yogis also. Yeah, and so he took this advice of meditation very much in a practical way, even of his graduate students, which is really interesting. So he invited them around the table with this device and imprinted it, and lo and behold, it was doing things. He says, even today, it blew me away that, wow, this thing, it actually works, it's protocol. Then this thing is intelligent. Now we have a new way of moving forward with intention research and calculating things, because that's thermodynamics. It's usual. It's those things are well known for a long, long time, 200 years. Okay, thermodynamics is why the man on the moon can be there, and that's why you can boil a pot of tea on the moon and have a cup of tea there, because it obeys the laws of thermodynamics. The word law is very significant. So, you know, you are right. But it also brings us to something that's not well appreciated. at least in the literature, in the medical literature, there's been a lot of controversy around homeopathy. Homeopathy, the remedies, which are, you suckus and splash and you make the original remedies, and then they're diluted, and there's no chemical component in them. But you're right, your intention of when you're doing that imprints the water. It's very powerful. And I have taken homeopathic remedies, and when I lived in London, that was one of my physicians was homeopathic practitioners, and I can tell you Jemima would give me and check in with me, and boy, this was not inert. And it was definitely not placebo. I'm very awake, I'm intelligent. I go see my regular person. I sometimes did the homeopathy, and I thought, whoa, this is way better. Or, I wasn't taking Tylenol, or I wasn't being prescribed stuff, but it was a remedy instead. So I can tell you from my personal experience that homeopathy is very powerful, and in the correct hands, in a good practitioner, these things can really move, as you said, move things around you. Okay, it can move you chemically, can move you because it creates an energy potential. They're not inert. So we have to get this thing about just chemicals out of our head. It's not just chemistry, but light can heal, sound can heal. We know these things to be true.
Yeah.
Why not your good vibes? It can heal.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I love that. That's a great way of saying it, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. No, because it's true. Usually really happy people usually stay pretty okay.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
There was a movie about that. It's a movie, something about laughter and how laughter heals.
I think it was Bernie Siegel from UCLA. Somebody, he used laughter to heal himself.
Yeah.
Right. And he made a very good book around it. And I think he was one of the first to establish the UCLA Center for Integrative Medicine. Now, don't quote me on this, but as far as I recall, yeah, you're right. Laughter is the best medicine, but a sense of humor, a sense of inner lightness. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not depressing or compressing or whatever.
Yes, good word.
Yeah, so it's all those things. Well, I'm going to say everybody do definitely read, because you did tweak me, even though I had read it before. I needed to go back, as you said. People have had to read it a few times.
Yes. It's written very in a light way. I told you I used a lot of creative things, essays. And it has more than 60 illustrations. And Dario Paniwa, his name is Dario Paniwa, he's in Italy, and I think it was divine intervention that he picked up on this project. It was a brief that various designers submitted work, and he just went all out. And I thought, well, his life changed as a result of illustrating this book, and if you go to Amazon.com, the author, there's a little video there of Dario who sent me that, look, something's happening to me. And, in pillar number 7 of the bridge, we took the extraordinary step to verify the Tiller model using the relics of the historical Buddha. And they came to my home in Los Angeles, and so the relics had permission to come to a private home. I imprinted the Tiller device with the loving kindness energy. I describe all of this as a protocol, and yes, indeed, the Tiller model works.
I was going to say, how do they find you, and how do they find the book? Now we know you can get this on Amazon. That was my question, but then how do they find you?
Well, at the end about the author, I have a website, nishamanekmd.com. They can sign up for the email list. And over time, I will have a way for people to interface with me. The book has just come out in the last 3 months or so it's doing well. I have no marketing. I'm a self-published author. I really wanted to get this to Tiller. This is the kind of material a publishing house would have been very intrigued with, would have picked it up. But it would have taken another year to 2 years. It's just how publishing industry works. And the other thing I wanted to be very rigorous about was I wanted illustrations. I'm a visual learner, and many people have found that the illustration have added to the enjoyment of the book, that they're interacting. It's just funny at times. It's how Dario has, created the illustration with my collaboration, and we went back and forth. It's edited, all of those things that we had to make sure that the illustrations speak either in a fun way, but in a memorable way to the learning.
Right. That's when I do the magazine, that's what I try to do is if you
visual learning,
visual, because I'm being dyslexic. I'm the one who I need the pictures.
Yes,
I need them.
You're way ahead. You're being dyslexic is not a bad thing at all. You're very lucky.
Somebody said, "Can you fix it?" And I go, "I'd really like to be able to spell better. That would be really great." But when I create, I'm on speed dial.
Yes.
Right. And most people don't realize that with the brain that way, it's on speed dial. It just is hyper fast.
Right.
So I can turn out a magazine in 2 weeks and flat, no problems. All by
myself. Yes, I admire that about you, Karen. I watch and I see a new edition come. I think, how does she do this? Beautiful pictures, lovely, lovely illustrations.
Thank you.
Very informative. I really enjoy them.
I enjoy making them because I always give me ahas.
Yes.
Something else comes together that I've never, that's why I do it, because I love learning. So
yes,
I'm addicted to learning. It is literally my soul's food.
Yes. Well, I hope you've learned a little bit about Dr. Tiller.
I did. And actually, I've spoken to him once. He called me because I wanted to be, he's been in the magazine a few times.
Yes.
And then one time he called me and I was thinking, could I get him on the radio show when I was doing the Awakenings? And I didn't quite, but we had a nice chat.
Yes. I see you in a few days. I will be flying to Scottsdale for the day. And I visit him here and there just to see how he's doing. We have a little get together, a little reunion, and just explore where's things. He's now 90 years old. He meditates daily. He still walks. He has a walker now, but he's, just in great spirits. So what a wonderful, very warm, I feel very, very lucky that he, just the two of us for so many years, we shared many, many things. And I barely scratched the surface in my book. There are many times I look at the videos and I think, well, how do we bring more out here? It takes time, and I'm already working on my next book. It's an extension of Bridging Science and Spirit. So I'm not going to tell you all about that.
Okay. So we'll do it again.
I'm working on it, huh?
We'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again. And so I'm working on my next book around
part 1. That'll be part 2.
Well, it is a very specific angle on the Tiller model that, people have wondered. And I think I did too. And I asked him one day and he told me what it was. And I thought, I don't understand it. So again, you get the information and it takes a few years and it matures. And suddenly I thought, I better write about this. So,
you know what I liked about some of the beginning stuff that I had in the magazine? It talks about how we're so connected with the earth and our polarities.
Yes, you're right. So, there is a polarity, the left and right hand, there's a polarity.
Yeah.
And I go into that in pillar number 6 with the Eamon circuit that you can actually, and Tiller taught me that, the Eamon circuit is something you can do. It's like a Tai Chi, but you're lying on your bed. Yeah. And I do that every day. It saved my writing for sure. Many times it was tough going. I didn't know Paul Dirac. I think Dirac was so hard for me to grasp. And then it came. I remember the day that I thought, I get this physical vacuum. I get what it is. It's hard to describe. It's like Dirac is my best friend, and Maxwell's my best friend, and Boltzmann's my best friend. It's not Einstein. These are the 3 physicists that I can see that they grapple with the invisible world. Mm-hmm. And that's very hard to do. Einstein was doing relativity of the cosmos. You can see the planets, you can see the light. Very different. When you cannot see things like Dirac or Boltzmann, he didn't see atoms, but he knew they existed.
Yeah.
He was a champion of those ideas. Then you can see how people grapple with these things, but came up with beautiful equations. And here we are. We're the beneficiaries of that wonderful intellectual exercise. But they came from the heart too. Yeah. Maxwell, for example, says, on his deathbed, he says, and I quote it, that it is something beyond me that made those equations come, the Maxwell's equations. It isn't me. It was something greater than me. And it's quite beautiful, quite poetic.
And Mozart said the same thing. It flowed through him. And what they often call it being in the flow, because it's coming from from a volume source.
But you have to be receptive.
Yes, yes. You have
to respect it. Where Tiller says, be meditative, because it will pass you by. It will pass you by. I'll give you another example that happened to me. When I was at the Mayo Clinic, I got a phone call from a friend who lives in Edmonton, and Patricia said, Nisha, the relics are in Minneapolis. You need to go see them. And then we have a chit chat about other things. I thought, relics? Who cares? But I gave meaning to it, and I went. The word relics has no meaning in my life. I'm Hindu. I don't know what the relics are. It changed my life, it changed my whole trajectory. When you do that, when you are receptive, even in a casual remark, so this is what I mean. When you give meaning to things that are unusual, unfamiliar, be aware it can change you, and you will be a bigger, and you have much more stimuli than you could ever think of. Okay, you live a fuller life, I think. You choose things carefully. That diet changes of its own. You don't have to read 10 million books. I think we've got enough books and enough scientific. Now you're, living your life from a more holistic perspective, but you are in charge. Okay, so that relic, that word, I gave meaning to it. I said, and when I put the phone down, I said, relic. So I looked it up on the internet, and I thought, it's free. Why not?
Go have an adventure.
Why not? But here's the thing that really happened at that relic tour. Buddha's relics hold his consciousness, no question about it. But there was no flesh and bones in front of me. My whole notion of consciousness in here was gone in a second. Split second. In fact, it blew me apart. Okay, it blew me wide open. I when I think back to that, it's so wonderful. It was a big gift, and it changed me. Yes, it made me more coherent, you might say, but it also showed me that consciousness, make no mistake about it, it's not in this little person called Nisha. You are always much more, and you radiate, as you said, you're much more. You are being that which you are. You're being your understanding. And it really shifted me very quickly. It was so quickly, it took me, a long time to then come to terms with that. And then do the imprinting when the relics came to our home. And again, the space, boom, it was Westminster Abbey, boom, within a few seconds. You didn't have to go and pump the space. It was there. And that's the gift, I think, that these relics, that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has kept them as treasures. Now, I think he feels that maybe humanity is mature enough that we can bring a Torah free of charge. Just imagine how many millions have been blessed by just viewing. That's looking at the face of Buddha. You don't have to look at a Buddha in flesh and bones. You are looking at Buddha when you look at the relics. And I felt that.
Yeah.
I felt that. Okay, I felt unconditional love. It was quite remarkable. And, there was no arms, things like that. But it was very much a meeting of friends, really.
I'm gonna do another word thing again. Like when you say being, I think of beaming. You're beaming your life. You're beaming your essence. So even if that relic it holds information, just like that glass case.
Yes. So, and that is subtle energy information again. Okay, you feel it, and you feel that your heart just goes. I thought, okay, I'm not imagining this. And the monk who blesses you was sitting quietly in the corner, and I was literally on my knees. And I had to sit down. I was so overcome. I couldn't function. The mind just goes. So the space and time had no meaning. You feel at one. It was so quick. Yeah. And, maybe karmically I was ready. I don't know. We can put rational things on this all the time. And so I just gave up on that. I just said, okay, well, And my brother was there with me. We both had this experience. And when I even use the word experience, it's limiting, okay? It's just that we were there and we met a friend. He's called Buddha. It's the person we named Buddha, who's timeless. And then the relics came home. The masters came to our home. And that's quite tremendous, you know.
Yeah, no, in one way, I have a gentleman that I know, which is Freddie Silva, and he goes to all these ancient sites, touches the rocks, and he gets the information and does the research.
Yes.
But when you look at it, the same structure that creates the rocks is the same structure that creates your bones.
Yeah, so the minerals, from dust to dust,
and there's still a lot of crystalline sort of structures that meld in that, which holds information.
Yes.
And so we're always us is all transmitting what's literally been fused to the bone.
Yes. So when I went to India, I was immersed in the information that is Vimala. Yeah. Her things, her bowls, her cot, her books, her personal library. They closed her center in Rajasthan and brought it to Gujarat. Thank God. Because those are relics.
Yeah.
She's like female Krishna. She's of that avatar stature. Nobody even knows her. You don't need to. They're very, there's no rah-rah around it. It just is. They visit planet Earth and they're gone. So many teachers come and they're gone. Ramana Maharishi, there's Ramana Maharishi of Arunachal, India. There's many. Nisargadatta Maharaj, I Am That. He wrote that classic. It's more a dialogue, very beautiful, very high master. So no rah-rah, they come, visit, gone, thank goodness, because they're very contemporary. They're always ever present, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. Those are real. This isn't just platitudes. These are real things when you experience, and we say thank you, namaste and thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think with that's a perfect closure for this part of the conversation, and we'll wait for part 2.
Thank you, Karen, for having me. I appreciate that you've given me this platform to share something about Dr. Tiller, about my journey, and I hope that the readers are, if anything, entertained, that their consciousness expands, that they take on that meditative life or contemplative life, that they become that Homo Spiritus. This is my wish for every reader of the book.
Thank you.